I made no move, uttered no sound, my body frozen to the chair. Should I run for the door? I wondered. I imagined myself rushing downstairs to the parlor with an account of what I had just seen. Who would believe me? And what lay under my bed? The very body of the girl, perhaps? My teeth were chattering so violently that I had to hold my jaws to stop them. As the minutes went by and nothing happened, I knew that I must gain courage enough to look under the bed myself before I summoned my uncle and Mrs. Hastings. If the corpse be there, I must warn them, for surely the shock, if it was close to claiming my sanity, might cost those two dear people their lives. I sat watching the floor, waiting for the hand to show itself again. But there was no noise, no movement. Breathing rapidly, a trickle of perspiration running down the middle of my back, despite my chill, I slowly leaned down and picked up the corner of the bedspread, then bent over until I could see beneath the bed frame. It was dark under the bed, and I stared into the blackness, looking for any sign of white fingers, but saw nothing more. What should I do? Whom was I to tell? If it was indeed a ghostly hand belonging to Jade, my uncle would ask, "You didn't bring anything green into the house, did you?" I would have to admit my guilt, and would be turned out of his home, deservedly so. I was trapped. Finally, I got up enough nerve to light my candle and kneel beside my bed. The light flickered, casting a yellow glow on the floor. The space beneath my bed was empty. The hand was gone. How was I to live here? How could I possibly sleep? To mention what I had seen to anyone at all, even Violet Morrison, might see me locked up as a madwoman, pitied and forgotten. And beneath this worry was an even greater one that perhaps there had been no hand at all, and my mind, like my mother's, began to betray me. By morning, I had slept no more than a few minutes here and a few there, and I went down to breakfast, groggy, my eyes puffy and red. Charles seemed amused by my discomfort. "What's wrong, orphan? You look a wreck," he said. "Is something wrong with your bed, then?" "No, I'm just restless," I said. "I'm sure I shall sleep better tonight." But Mrs. Hastings studied me over the porridge. "You shall indeed, or I'll not have you work at the hat shop," she declared. "There's no need for it. If the work is too much for you, that will be that." This bothered me sorely, for I wanted to have a job with spending money of my own. I wanted to be friends with Violet, and to do other things besides sit at home, no matter how fond I was of the cook. My worry and lack of sleep upset me even more, for if I did not do a good job for Helene, she would let me go. I struggled through the morning as best I could, and was disappointed at lunchtime when it rained, and Violet and I could not sit on the bench outdoors in the sun. "Tell you what," Violet said, "I'll go next door and get our meat pies, and we'll eat them back here. Helene goes to the bank on Fridays, so we shall have the place to ourselves. We can be grand ladies coming in to purchase bonnets, and try on every hat in the shop if we like." I smiled at her plan in spite of myself, and was quite ready to sit down when she returned. We spread a cloth on the table in the back room, turned the sign at the window so customers would not interrupt our lunch, then settled down to eat and talk while rain streamed down the windows and beat on the roof. "Lordy, that's a right good blow," Violet declared, looking out at the window as she ate. "Almost like a hurricane. We see plenty of those here in Whispers. Wouldn't mind a bit if I never saw one again." We finished the pies and debated whether to go back to the bib and bottle for biscuits and ale, when we decided it was not fit weather to go out again. "Helene is probably stranded at the bank. If she goes out in this, she'll ruin her silk," said Violet. "So, what shall we do till she gets back?" And then, mischievously, she added, "We can always tell ghost stories." "I think not," I told her. "I've trouble enough sleeping in my uncle's house." "Why?" asked Violet with a grin. "Do you hear moans and rattling chains?" "No, I hear nothing like that." "Cries and whispers?" "No, nor that." And suddenly I asked, "Violet, do you know why Jade Green killed herself? Did anyone ever find that out?" Violet shook her head and brushed the crumbs from her dress. "She left no note, nor did she tell any secrets." It was the greatest shock, they say, to Mrs. Hastings, as she expected nothing of the sort from her. Did anyone ever tell you how she took her life? Was it poison? I was thinking of the words to Springfield Mountain, her favorite song. Here, Violet lowered her voice, though we were the only two in the shop. That's the strangest of all, Judith, and the last way in this world I would ever want to kill myself. How? She bled to death, cut off her own hand. I clenched my stomach. Horrible, isn't it? They say she bled all over the floor. And then, looking at me, she cried, "Oh, Judith, you're pale as cream. I shouldn't have told you. You have to live there after all." "It's all right," I assured her. "It's something I would have found out anyway." But all the while, my fingers and toes have gone cold as ice. I wanted to busy myself as soon as possible, so I began my afternoon's work. Helene came in at last and said that she had met Zeke at the livery stable and said that he will be by for me at 5 o'clock, with an umbrella to shield me, and I was very glad to hear it. When the day was over, however, and I climbed in the wagon, the rain had stopped and there was no need of an umbrella, though gray clouds still swirled overhead. I was so nervous, though, that everything seemed to me a bad omen. "Zeke," I said, feeling distraught, "I would ask a favor of you." "Of course," he said. "Meet me at the back of the garden by the alley in half-hour's time. There's something I want to give you," I told him. He glanced at me with a surprised smile. "How could I refuse a gift?" he asked. "Promise you'll come?" I pleaded. He looked at me more strangely still. "Of course. What's the matter, Judith?" I tried to be happy. "Oh, nothing," I said with a small laugh. "I just want to give you a gift for driving me home." He let me out at my uncle's gate, and I hurried up the walk and the steps to the door. Once inside, I called to Mrs. Hastings that I would have my tea with her shortly, and then ran immediately upstairs. Every time I opened my closet, I did so now with great trepidation, and as I put my hand upon the doorknob, I braced myself for what I might see. My room was no longer a safe retreat, a refuge from the cares of the day, and if I was to stay in whispers, this could not continue. I knew I must rid myself of the picture frame my mother had given me, dear as it was, so that once again there would be peace in my uncle's house. I took a deep breath and turned the knob, my eyes on the floor of the closet, searching for the severed hand. But nothing seemed amiss, and with my courage bolstered, I crawled to the back of the closet beneath the eaves and opened the lid of the trunk. All appeared as it should be, and I decided it was time to remove my summer frocks anyway, so I set to work, lifting them out one by one and placing them on the floor beside me. The framed photo was just as I had left it, lying face down on the bottom of the trunk. Picking it up in one hand, my dresses in the other, I backed out of the closet and laid my clothes over a chair. Then I wiped the frame on my skirt, and turning the photo over, I choked back a scream, for I saw not the gentle face of my mother, but the face of a stranger, a girl my own age in a cotton dress, her eyes set in a saucy stare. I threw the picture on the bed in fright, one hand over my chest. Jade. It had to be. She had taken over my frame, my trunk, my room, and for all I knew, my mind. I knew not where it would end. Wrapping my arms around my body, I leaned trembling against the wall. Finally, however, mindful that Zeke was waiting for me at the back of the garden, I once more gathered my wits about me. A picture is only a picture, I told myself, and went over to retrieve the frame and remove the photograph from within. When next I looked, however, it was a photograph of my mother once again. My breath came in short, faint little gasps. I slipped the picture of my mother out of its frame and put it back in the trunk. Then I searched through my box of photographs until I found one of myself at the proper size, taken when I was 10. It was not at all a good likeness, but it was all that would fit. I put it inside the frame. Running one finger lovingly over the green silk, I wrapped the frame picture in tissue and went downstairs, hiding my parcel in the folds of my skirt. "The water's boiling, Judith. Come have some tea," called Mrs. Hastings. "In a while," I called back. Zeke gave me a ride home this afternoon when my legs needed a walk instead. I take a stroll in the garden first, and then we can have our tea." She came out into the sunroom where I was preparing to open the door. "It's muddy out there, my girl. You best watch where you step." "I will," I told her, and then I went outside and walked through the hedgerows until I was out of sight of the house. The garden stretched a long way back, ending at the alley, and I began to hurry, anxious to get rid of the frame that had caused so much distress to me. Never did I think I would part with this gift my mother had given me, but I knew I could not live with the ghostly hand in the house. The longer I clutched the frame, the more desperately I longed to be rid of it, and soon I began to run, unmindful of the puddles, slipping and sliding along the muddy path in the maze of hedgerows, until I came to a corner and, turning swiftly, ran right into my cousin Charles.